Second of all, your visit comes on a day we've got some breaking news, some genuine breaking news from Kyiv, where President Biden met with Ukrainian President Zelensky this morning. It was Mr. Biden's first visit to Ukraine since the Russian invasion nearly a year ago. And this week, also, Senator Sanders is out with a new book. It's called It's Okay to Be Angry About Capitalism. Senator, good morning to you. Because of the Ukraine news, before we get to the book, I want to ask about the situation in Ukraine. We're sending a lot of money there at the moment, money generated by our capitalist system. So there is a connection, I suppose. What needs to happen going forward with U.S. policy toward Ukraine?
Well, I'm glad the president is in Ukraine. What Putin did is outrageous. It is the worst conflict in Europe since World War II. And I think it is important for the United States, NATO, our allies, to tell Putin he's not going to be able to get away with it. And I support what the president is doing.
You support what the president is doing. All right, let's talk about the book. It's okay to be angry about capitalism. Why did you think now was the time for this message? And why okay? It seems like you feel that there's a degree of resistance to the idea of any criticism of the golden goose.
Look, Tony, this country faces enormous crises. And it's important that we have a serious discussion about those crises. Economically, what's going on in America? Simple reality is the people on top, the billionaire class, are doing phenomenally well. Meanwhile, the middle class continues to shrink. And in the richest country in the history of the world, today, over 60% of the American people are living paycheck to paycheck. Virtually every city in this country has a major housing crisis. We are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a human right. We spend twice as much per capita. Meanwhile, drug companies making billions. The insurance companies making billions. The gap between the rich and everybody else growing wider. We don't talk about those issues. Let's lay it on the table. Let's have that debate.
You talk about those issues. You lay them out very well here in the book. And you say things that we had heard from you on the campaign trail many years ago. But I think what the American people struggle with is how do you change a system that appears to be broken in so many ways?
Okay, well, let's put it, that's a good question. And the answer is this system is working very, very well. For the people who own this network, for the billionaire class. We are involved in class warfare. People on top are doing great. So it's not hard to come up with the idea. You want health care for all? Duh. Every major country on earth is doing. I live 50 miles away from Canada. You have leukemia. You're in the hospital for a month. You know what your bill is when you get out? Zero. As a nation that's spending half what we spend per capita.
So you look at taxing billionaires for an example, but what other solutions are you offering?
Well, in terms of health care, look, just think for a moment. If everybody in America today said, you know what, when I'm sick, my kid is sick, I go to the doctor, I don't have to worry about the bill. All right, you know what that would mean to the health of this country? If people did not have to worry about sending their kids to college and what it would cost them. If people didn't see their housing costs go up. We are the richest country in the history of the world. We should be discussing this. Why don't we have health care for all? Why isn't college education, at least public colleges and universities, tuition free? Why do we have a gap? Do you think, does anybody think, America, 3 people own more wealth than the bottom half of American society? Anyone think that's appropriate? Let's talk about it. What do we do about it?
And you're saying that the system is working the way it's intended to work.
Exactly. It's working great for the billionaire class.
No doubt about it. Now, you introduced a bill last week with Senator Warren that would not only extend Social Security, but increase benefits. Now, do you believe that by taxing wealthier Americans that you could get some bipartisan support on this bill?
We'll see. But when we talk about the problems of America and why we're not solving them, please don't forget that this political system is corrupt as well. All right? So if you are a member of Congress and you were put into power by some super PAC owned by a billionaire, you think the first thing you're going to do is say, I think billionaires should pay their fair share of taxes. I doubt it. So you got a corrupt
Like the way that the interviewer is interviewing him, it just feels like is he patronizing him? Like, am I crazy? Like, it just feels weird. Maybe I'm just being parasocial with Bernie. Who knows?
Political system. I know that sounds harsh, But if super PACs can spend unlimited sums of money to beat you, is that corrupt? I think it is.
One of your proposals in here is actually to rewrite parts of the Constitution to make changes. But, you know, the guy at home right now, even the guy not doing well sitting at home might be saying, yeah, but you're acknowledging that this system we have has created more wealth than any country has ever had in the history.
There it is. There it is. No, man. You're conditioning him to say that. The guy at home is watching and going, honestly, it feels like Bernie is spitting the fucking truth. By the way, this also ties back perfectly to what we were talking about with respect to Noam Chomsky and manufactured consent. This is a self-selecting process. It's a self-eliminating process. You have this motherfucker in this position specifically because he's a dog for the capital owners. He will say the right things.
Through the world, tremendous innovation, things you acknowledge in the book. And now you're talking about changing that? I get, you know, or tweaking it.
Tony, it has created enormous wealth for the people on top. You tell me, in this great nation, I grew up in a family that struggled economically. We lived paycheck to paycheck. Why today, in 2023, over 60% of the people living paycheck to paycheck? Why? Let's talk about where we want to go. And I'll tell you something else that's happening. With all of the artificial intelligence, the robotics are out there. Who's making those decisions, whether you're going to have a job or not have a job? Are working people involved in that? So all that I'm saying in this book, in that this age, with all of the technology out there, all the wisdom out there, let's create an economy that works for all, not just the few.
I want to ask a question about Jimmy Carter here, but, you know, on AI, it is current tax policy in this country that if companies buy an AI system, it's a capital investment, even if it lays off workers, they get a tax benefit.
You're right.
Encouraged by the system. I imagine you would want to change that. But
we would.
You're saying tax robots.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, of course. What do you mean? Bro, I hate this shit so much. They would never be this contentious while interviewing a billionaire advocating for lower taxes. Yeah. Jimmy Carter did 9/11. It's true.
Just a core of decency and modesty. Didn't serve on corporate boards, went back to his hometown, didn't go to live in some giant mansion, didn't give high-powered speeches worth a lot of money. Regular guy, not a quote normal guy, seemed like a regular guy in real life. Your most memorable encounter with him, if you could, sir.
Everything you said is true. I mean, he was a good president. I think what people will remember him for is what he did after the presidency. He didn't capitalize on being president. He got on boards. He didn't make a whole lot of money. I think he still lives today in the home that he grew up in.
All right, bro, you're fucking glazing my man up hard as fuck, okay? Jimmy Carter is the best PR agent in the world. You know, the Jimmy Carter doing Jimmy Carter shit since he fucking left the presidency is literally the inverse of the same coin that is like, oh man, Bernie Sanders is such a bad socialist because he's selling a book. You're a good guy. You're a good guy if you're like literally, you know, building houses. Who cares what you actually did when you had power? Who cares how you used it? Who cares what kind of fucking reactionary politics you brought into well, not brought, but basically advocated for from the position of the presidency that basically created the perfect grounds for Ronald Reagan to come in and seize control and just undermine America and labor rights completely, okay? Because hey, listen, you're building houses. Oh, here. I mean, the number one Jimmy Carter hater of all time is, by your logic, Felix Biederman. The big difference between Jimmy Carter and Bill Clinton is that Carter actually fully believed his destruction of the regulatory state was actually helping regular Americans. Well, that and their personal conduct towards women, just a fucking historical disaster. However, I don't care how nice he was. He went for the biggest job in the world at one of the most pivotal times of recent history in deregulated trucking that met with Christopher Lash. The latter is pretty funny considering the purchase Lash has with certain online sectors nowadays. Felix Biederman is the number one hater. I'll give you one example, right, of the Carter take, right? Like, under Carter's watchful eye was the official, well, not official, but like the unofficial arming of the Mujahideen and training of the Mujahideen, right? Like, that happened not under Ronald Reagan. It happened publicly under Ronald Reagan, but not so publicly under under Jimmy Carter. Like, that's where it fucking actually started. Here, Jimmy Carter is an unrepentant genocidal war criminal who, among other things, sold arms to the Indonesian dictatorship as it engaged in genocide in East Timor.
Carter increased as the Indonesian atrocities were increasing. They peaked in 1978. Carter's flow of weapons to Indonesia.
But that's just like American foreign policy, right? Like, that's American foreign policy. That's like part of it. So Carter did 9/11. Carter had a role in the arming and radicalizing of the Mujahideen. Yes. Okay.
Indonesia increased when Congress imposed human rights restrictions. By then, there was a human rights movement in Congress to block the flow of advanced weaponry to Indonesia. Carter arranged through Mondale, vice president, to get Israel to send U.S. Skyhawks to Indonesia to enable Indonesia to complete what turned out to be near genocide, killing maybe a quarter of the population or something. In the Middle East, Carter just won the Nobel Prize. His great achievement was the Camp David agreements. The Camp David agreements are presented as a diplomatic triumph for the United States. In fact, they were a diplomatic catastrophe. At Camp David, the United States and Israel accepted, finally, Egypt's 1971 offer, which they had then, U.S. had rejected at the time, except that now it was worse from the U.S.-Israeli point of view because it included the Palestinians. In order to get Israel to accept Egypt's 1971 offer, after a major war and atrocities and so on, Carter raised aid, military and other aid to Israel to more than 50% of total aid worldwide. Israel used it at once in exactly the way they said they were going to do, as every sane person knew, as an opportunity to attack their northern neighbor, first in 1978, then in 1982, and to increase integration of the occupied territories. And that's for starters. We can continue.
Timor was a Portuguese colony. Indonesia had no claim to it, and in fact stated that they had no claim to it. During the period of colonization, there was a good deal of politicization. The different groups developed. A civil war broke out in August '75. It ended up in a victory for Fredlin, which was one of the groupings, described as populist Catholic in character with some typical leftish rhetoric. Indonesia at once started intervening. Ford and Kissinger visited Jakarta, I think it was December 5th. We know that they had requested that Indonesia delay the invasion until after they left because it would be too embarrassing. And within hours, I think, after they left, the invasion took place on December 7th.
This council must consider Indonesian aggression against East Timor as the main issue of the discussion.
When the Indonesians invaded, the UN reacted as it always does, calling for sanctions and condemnation and so on. Various watered-down resolutions were passed, but the U.S. was very clearly not going to allow anything to work. By 1978, it was approaching really genocidal levels. The church and other sources.
I started listening to Richard Wolff, and I want to get your thoughts on him. He's great when he was talking about Marxist theory. Not so great when talking about contemporary U.S. domestic policies. Don't listen to any of his new shit. Where he talk, like, don't listen to him on COVID vaccine, stuff like that, but he's fucking solid as far as his, as far as talking about Marx, talking about or making it as consumable and digestible as possible.
Is estimated about 200,000 people killed. The U.S. backed it all the way. The U.S. provided 90% of the arms. Right after the invasion, arms shipments were stepped up. When the Indonesians actually began to run out of arms in 1978, the Carter administration moved in and increased arms sales. And other Western countries did the same. Canada, England, Holland, and everybody who could make a buck was in there trying to make sure they could kill more Timorese. There is no Western concern for issues of aggression, atrocities, human rights abuses, and so on, if there's a profit to be made from them. Nothing could show it more clearly than this case.
Will you be covering the UK Tavistock Clinic lawsuit? No, I don't know what the fuck it is, but what is that? I don't know what it is. I don't know. Whenever I hear shit like this, though, I'm always like, what? NHS to close the Tavistock? Oh, God, it's a fucking Jesus Christ. The NHS is closing the Tavistock Child Gender Identity Clinic. It's the UK's only dedicated gender identity clinic for children and young people. God, I don't want to cover any fucking British news ever again, okay? I just don't. It's disgusting, okay? It's literally like, it's so fucking obvious what is going on in the UK, and so many dumb motherfuckers literally can't open their goddamn eyes and see the reality, okay? It's like, the more the British government implements austerity measures, the more they privatize key elements of society that are supposed to be helpful to the British people, the more they strike break, the more they refuse to fucking increase wages, the more they do that, the more they also simultaneously have to find a different scapegoat. Okay? And the scapegoat always is trans people. There's like fucking 1,000 trans people in the UK, but the entire media can't shut the fuck up about trans people. It's literally responsible for everything that's going on in society. Trans people and immigrants, trans people and immigrants, trans people and immigrants, trans people and immigrants, trans people and immigrants. It's like, shut the fuck up. Fix the fucking NHS. You have a prime minister that wasn't even fucking voted in, that literally ran originally or on numerous occasions talked about how like his goal is to redirect funds from poor neighborhoods to more productive rich neighborhoods. And all these dumb motherfuckers can talk about, the Lib Dem cowards especially, the centrist fucking pieces of shit that deserve the worst, okay? Especially so. And even the fucking stupid ass, conservative ass, Tory ass fucking Labour Party members like Keir Starmer, all and shit like that. Have some fucking backbone, okay? Push for the basically general strike that almost happened. And do the right thing for once, dude. Fucking Jesus Christ. Every goddamn day, they're just literally like, oh my God, women are being under attack because trans people exist. I hate it. I hate it so much. Anyway, Keir Starmer is too busy fucking making sure Jeremy Corbyn is not a part of the party, so... In the depraved imagination of the Western media class, someone like Castro is an evil monster, but politicians like Carter, Clinton, Bush, Blair, who have killed untold millions across the world, are good, decent, honorable men because they consider their victims to be subhuman. For the genocide at East Timor is but one part of Carter's long, bloody record. For a detailed account of all of those, the mass murder, which he has never even bothered to acknowledge or apologize for because he's a profoundly depraved monster. See this piece. Counterpunch, Jimmy Carter's blood-drenched legacy. Don't believe those saying. He later acknowledged his crimes and expressed remorse. When asked about Indonesia in 2007, he lied about his record and said he was too busy with other stuff to care and pay attention. Again, they consider their victims to be subhuman, like killing ants. Amy Goodman asked Jimmy Carter, I was wondering, by the way, shouts out to Amy Goodman, incredible. Obviously, independent journalism, not in mainstream media. Democracy Now! Is the best. Amy Goodman is the best. She is the GOAT. By the way, there are apparently 250,000 trans people in the UK. I think it's important to get these numbers right. Wait, really? I just made up the number. I don't fucking know. I always just say that trans people are like a tiny fraction of the population. There's 250,000 trans people in the UK? That's crazy. That's a big-ass amount, dude. What the fuck? Why don't all the trans people just eat the cis people? The TERFs, at least. I mean, actually, that's like a big group. Holy fuck. Why don't 250,000 trans people in the UK get together and just eat the TERFs? Who I 100% believe is smaller than 250,000. Yeah. That's still like 0.3%. Still. Well, as you may know, I had a policy when I was president of not selling weapons if it would exacerbate a potential conflict in a region of the world. And some of our allies were very irate about this policy. And I have to say that I was not, as thoroughly briefed about what's going on in East Timor as I should have been. I was more concerned about the other parts of the world then. Along those lines, as president, what do you think are the reasons why you could be so isolated? A president, for example, in the case of Timor, saying now you wish you had known more at the time what was going on. This is such an insane answer. He's just like, yeah, I fucking, escalated arms, went against my own perspective and own prior sentiments on the matter. Yeah, it's too much. I couldn't be bothered. It's astonishing how easily lying comes to them. Well, you may know I had a policy of not selling weapons if they would exacerbate conflict in a region of the world. They accepted Israel, Indonesia, Iran, Central America, Afghanistan, and several African countries. Carter literally destroyed Afghanistan. He's responsible for the countless deaths that have happened to this very day. This is true. This is a very good take here. Remember, this is something that we talk about all the time, which is that it wasn't actually Ronald Reagan that was responsible for the acceleration of civil war, the escalation of civil war in Afghanistan. It was actually Jimmy Carter's presidency. Also, like, I mean, I don't give a shit. Yeah, he might even be like a nice guy. It's almost like an ACAB perspective where it's like, you think like, oh yeah, he spent his life building fucking homes. It's like, great, man, thank you. I mean, that's great. It's just wonderful that that's what you did. But you also like are responsible for a lot of bloodshed. Anyway. Carter is terrible in all the ways the U.S. presidents are terrible, but I will always have a soft spot for him for how he helped defend the Hugo Chavez government against coup attempts. Jimmy Carter says election process in Venezuela is the best in the world. That's why they call him a bleeding heart lib. That's enough for, I mean, this and many other reasons, like him openly stating he doesn't want to escalate conflict anywhere around the world, despite actually doing so, is the reason why he is like one of the most hated on libtards in the eyes of the Republican Party. They fucking hate, like, before Barack Obama, the number one hated on libtard was Carter. Of course, Obama basically fucking changed the process by being black while also being the president. No, it wasn't Clinton. People did not like the Clintons, but people hated Hillary Clinton more. I would say that, I mean, I guess it is every fucking liberal president. They hated every liberal president. I'm realizing. But Clinton is more like, at the time, was more so a meme. Anyway. Not to excuse me, but I wonder if the president just brings with it choices that will inevitably result in the deaths, no matter what option you pick. Like, it's just part of being president. If Bernie were to become president, could he truly be a pacifist? Oh, no, of course not. Anyway. Part of the hate on Carter is the justification for deifying Reagan. Yeah, Reagan. Anyway, let's, what the fuck was I gonna cover here? We talked about Bernie. That's how we got the Carter.
Plains, Georgia. I had the opportunity to meet him several times. He is decency is the word. He is his family is very decent, down-to-earth, ordinary people. I was with him a number of years ago at the Carter Center, which does really, really good work, among other things, making sure that elections held around the world are done democratically and fairly. So he has lived out his post-presidential years with a lot of dignity. We should all be proud of what he has accomplished.
All right, Senator Sanders, I see your wife Jane over there. Did you give her a text or anything on Valentine's Day?
I have no comment on that, actually. It's classified.
I'm going to try to catch Jane's eye over there. We'll talk about that in the break. Senator Sanders, thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. The book is It's Okay to be Angry About Capitalism, and it goes on sale tomorrow. And you can see more of Senator Sanders tonight on The Late Show with Steve.
At least these fucking pieces of shit don't do the whole, like,
And here in the United
capitalist, but, or you claim to be a capitalist, and yet here you are selling a book shit. You know what I mean?